Okay, thanks very much. Welcome to the case competition for the Munk School Munk One's program. I want to start today's event by thanking our judges, Jonathan Hara, Janice Stein, and Drew Fagan, for very graciously giving us some of their time and skill and expertise to advise our students and judge on the best team's pitch and solution for some complex problems they've been dealing with over the past semester in different issue areas: in security, political economy, global health, environment, and digital governance. So thanks very much to all three judges, and thanks also very much to our 5 amazing Master of Global Affairs students who have been mentoring our undergraduates throughout the semester, dealing with some really complex issues, helping them wrestle these issues to the ground, targeting a specific solution, and bringing in advisors from academia, from the public and private sector, in order to advise them on these solutions, on the viability, their implementation. So they have really enabled this process, and we're all so much better off for it. Thanks for your terrific work. So I'll go through quickly our order of events because it's a very tight schedule. We're going to have 5 presentations from 5 different lab groups, and in the order of the agenda. We're going to hear 10 minutes from them, and I'll be very ruthless with my 10 minutes. I'll give you a 2-minute warning when you're almost up, and then we'll have 5 minutes for the judges to ask any questions, and we'll go through to the next presentation. After 3 presentations, we'll stop for just a couple of minutes to catch our breath and get a coffee, and then we'll do 2 more. We'll allow the judges 10 minutes to deliberate at the end, and they will adjudicate on the most feasible, innovative solution to your particular problem sets. So with that, I would just like to add one more word to the judges. The teams are pitching to the audience that they would like to partner with in order to implement their solution. So not you specifically, but they might be pitching to you as a public sector agency, a private company, or a voluntary sector organization, and they will tell you when they start. Okay. So our first team is our security lab, pitching on curbing voluntary recruitment of child soldiers in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Thank you. Meet Emmanuel. Emmanuel is a child soldier. Growing up, like most children in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Emmanuel used to play football with his friends and help out on the family farm. Unfortunately, he was surrounded by economic depravity and a lack of social opportunity. So he had to make a very important decision. Should he join a militia group which offers education and money, or should he stay where he is? And unfortunately for Emmanuel, at the age of 12, he joined the My Rebel group. As a child soldier, Emmanuel experienced things that most of us can barely imagine. By the age of 13, he murdered a man, and he witnessed others around him being killed. He was likely given a dangerous mixture of gunpowder and cocaine, and he may have even been sexually abused. Now, the My Rebel group, they're only one of 9 rebel groups operating within the DRC. And Emmanuel is only one of 30,000 child soldiers. Now, as a child soldier, he did not receive any of the economic incentive or education that he was offered. In fact, if Emmanuel could go back in time to that little farm with his family, he probably would have made another decision. Now, what if you could help children like Emmanuel? In fact, what if there was a way to help children stop before they decided to volunteer for an active militia rebel group? And that is exactly what we intend to do. My name is Conor, and my team and I are Targeted Mobile Communications. Together, we've come up with the solution to disseminate psychologically geared texts to children who are considering volunteering for rebel groups. Through these texts, we will use specific and engaging language which encourages them to reconsider before volunteering. As a major telecommunications provider, we feel that your stake in the solution will be quite valuable. By the end of this presentation, you'll understand three things. The first is the specificity of our global problem. The second are the characteristics and details of our solution. And finally, how you and your company have the opportunity to save thousands of lives.
Now, the specific issue that we will be dealing with is the 64% of child soldiers who choose to volunteer. Now, it is difficult to understand why any child would put themselves under physical and psychological duress. To understand this, we must look at the social and historical context in the DRC. Years of conflict have left children and adults alike feeling that they are physically threatened and feeling as if their economic, social, political, and employment opportunities are stifled. Therefore, they see no other choice than to volunteer. Therefore, this question that we have asked ourselves as TMC is how we can prevent the voluntary recruitment aspect of these child soldiers.
So let's answer that question. This is a solution. It's a three-stage plan. Number one, text messages are delivered to the population in Katanga and Kivu using your systems. Number two, the message is received by the population, and the population responds by a binary system, either an affirmative or a negative answer. And this, in turn, influences the population's decision-making. So once again, three-stage process, very simple, very effective, and very cost-effective.
So the strategy behind the construction of these text messages is both psychological and cultural. By using principles of commitment and reciprocity, as well as bridging theories of market exposure effectiveness and exposure learning, we can psychologically influence the decision-making process when children are faced with the opportunity to volunteer for the militia. We use a world value survey to identify the strongest cultural truisms that exist within the DRC. These will be incorporated to create strategically phrased text messages that play on their values, hopes, and fears. By frequently exposing individuals to text messages that connect pre-existing beliefs with our desired concept, the psychological impact will be stronger and more long-lasting. An example of these text messages is the following. Order in the nation is best maintained through peaceful measures. Do you agree? Send us a yes or no reply and receive 5 free text messages. The World Value Survey shows that 74% of participants saw maintaining order in the nation as their first priority as a civilian. In addition, the vast majority of respondents think violence against other people was never justifiable, thereby concluding that people prefer peace. The latter half of these messages creates incentive to commit to the idea of peaceful measures through offering incentive. This also generates reciprocity, which will influence their decision to pass the message later on. Let's look at another example. Boys are often raped by militiamen when they join the forces. Do you want this to happen to your child? Text in your answer for extra minutes. So again, we're playing on the cultural truisms. 90% of respondents said they'd rather not have homosexuals as their neighbors, and most saw homosexuality as never justifiable. Again, commitment and reciprocity are generated in the latter half of these text messages. So as you can see, these are very strategically constructed text messages that are geared to generate a maximum impact.
Our proposal to send text messages will be implemented specifically in Katanga, South Kivu, and North Kivu. Our text messages will incentivize our subjects' participation with a chance to gain free text messages, and this is aimed to increase participation rate as well as psychological penetration. In order to implement our proposal, we'll be cooperating with you, and we'll expand this part in the CSR section later on in the presentation. Our criteria of funding for initiatives are scalability goals, distinction from other programs, and sustainability.
So how will we know if we've succeeded? We will collect data on the number of responses received, starting immediately after the first messages are sent. We will examine the number of respondents who reply more than once, and we will also collect data on the percentage of respondents that are positive. This will show whether the messages have changed the attitudes of Congolese citizens. Further proof of our success will come from a reduction in the voluntary child soldier recruitment rate.
So once again, we mentioned that we'll really go through the finances, and it's a very, very cost non-intensive program. In fact, the capital requirement is only $20,000 in the initial year and none in the following years, considering that you help us out with the actual program. So what we actually put in the capital requirement were logistics meetings and also an unanticipated cost. So these are very conservative in terms of the numbers. So overall, just once again, $20,000 in the initial year and no cost afterwards.
So the TMC project is in your best interest because it aligns with Bharti Airtel's CSR policies. After taking a look at your 2012 to 2013 financial report, we have seen that by participating in this project, you will be able to fulfill the 9 principles of your business responsibility, particularly principles 4 and 5, with promoting human rights and providing aid to the disadvantaged, marginalized, and vulnerable. In this case, that population being the voluntary child soldiers in the Democratic Republic of Congo. You also have interest in the same areas that we want to target, and this we have seen through your implementation of Airtel Africa and raising your investments in the DRC in 2013 by 27%. You also have a mobile sustainability plan in your CSR portfolio, and this is why we think you will be a valuable partner in our project.
Now let's look at the risks that follow our program. The first risk is that our program may be inappropriate for the DRC. However, seeing as 50% of the population already have cell phones, and 55% of the population live within a region in which there are satellites in which they can receive reception, we can see that this is not very high probability. Also, there is a program in the DRC called ICT4Gov that is funded by the World Bank, and they have deemed the DRC appropriate for communication technology programs, and they themselves have established a program in which they use phone messaging and texting between citizens and government to establish transparency. Now, the second issue that I would like to discuss is the participation of the population. However, seeing as that our efforts are mainly psychological, even if these people read these text messages, they are participating. Also, we provide incentive for them, and therefore they would want to participate anyway. And the last is angering the militia. This last risk would impact our project greatly. However, it is not likely because our efforts are mainly psychological, and psychological efforts are not established in a country in the DRC, and so the militia would not see this as a threat.
Our solution is comprehensive, effective, and innovative. Nothing like this has ever been tried before, and it's something that we believe, based on our research, will succeed. Together, let's help save children's lives. The floor is now open to questions. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so can I start off? Yes, first of all, that was great. Really great. Tell me why you don't think it's a risk that you're going to anger the militia. Let me just say your answer is not fully persuasive. The fact that you say it's psychological and it's just text messages, they're still going to be concerned about that.
They will be concerned. However, they have been known to work with different NGOs at different times because they want to appear more political and diplomatic. Each one of them stands for democracy, and that is what they are saying. So therefore, even if they did see us as a threat, first of all, they would not know who to target, as we are working with Bharti Airtel, which is like a big cell phone company. And second of all, it's because of the that they want to appear more diplomatic, that they wouldn't do anything.
No, you don't know. So you probably needed some probability in there rather than just say 0, right? Because actually you don't know. It could be very unlikely, it could be moderately unlikely, but it's not a risk.
I think one of the things that we would do is test the waters. So the first text message that we showed you a sample, it's much more moderate than the second one. So the first one, we're just trying to promote peaceful measures, so children have the idea that violence is something they want to pursue, and they know that joining the militia, you will experience violence. The second one, as you saw, is much more extreme. It actually targets the militia. So I think we'd have to put up feelers to see how heavily the militia would be responding to these text messages and act accordingly, because there are more moderate measures that we can take and still implement the same psychology.
How do you target the population? You've got a subset of the population you're aiming at. How do you get it to them? And would you start with particular areas of the country? You mentioned half the country has cell phone coverage, both satellite coverage, and about half the population actually has cell phones. So how would you roll this out? Are there particular areas of the country that you think would be more conducive to this to begin with?
Yeah, definitely. Let me just ask you. You mentioned that 50% of the population, how we're supposed to target it. So in our research, we encountered that the Katanga and Kivu regions are especially at danger for child soldiers because they have the natural resources in the DRC. So we plan to target especially those regions because they have more of a concentration of child soldiers. In terms of the statistics themselves, we noticed that during our research that 55% of the population, specifically in the Katanga and Kivu region, were also covered along with the rest of the country. So we have certain statistics that these two regions are really conducive to mobile solutions. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Also, how do you get, you've got a relatively small subset you want to get at, 12-year-olds to 20-year-old boys. I'm just, how do you get it? You're going to send a lot of text messages out to, how's that work?
Well, the latter half of our phase is to start encouraging through the psychological framework and the principles of reciprocity. Eventually, we'll start encouraging individuals to share the messages with their neighbors. So initially, perhaps the texts are only going to 20-year-olds because for whatever reason the 20-year-olds are only getting it, hypothetically. Eventually, they will be encouraged to share those text messages and then will feel psychologically inclined to do so. So in that way, we'll reach subsets of the population that don't necessarily have cell phones.
Wondering if you can talk about using just SMS services. A lot of SMS services are focused on behavior change. We've seen this throughout the world many, many times. A lot of these opportunities are also accompanied with on-the-ground, face-to-face mentorship, education, things like that. There needs to, and oftentimes there's a behavioral element to that. In this case, I'm not sure that you have this proposed, or if you do, as your organization, are you partnering with another NGO? And if then, as a secondary question, if you can start to think about the costs, if you can describe the costs to us other than the 20,000, what this might cost Airtel? Okay,
definitely. So in terms of the long-term horizon is what we're looking at. This is our plan. So we plan to initially, you can see that we have our capital expenditures here. We have our information provision through, well, we have our texting throughout the whole period, so short-term to long-term. Then we plan to implement the following three. So picture messaging, information provision through radio, and then big data revenue generation. You also mentioned that face-to-face, we're not exactly that kind. We're trying to really stay away from face-to-face because the Democratic Republic of Congo is very hostile to physical means of solutions. If I'm saying this correctly, the DRC is also very hostile in terms of the infrastructure, roads. A lot of people actually travel by river if you want to get to places. So it's not really something that that could really be implemented. That's why we really hesitate and stay away from the physical aspect of the solution. Your second question, you mentioned that the finances. So this is our base. Sorry, let me go back to the finance section here. So in our capital requirement, the $20,000, we have an initial capital expenditure of $20,000. So the logistics include creating a website and I guess really tech-based applications. And we also included a subset for meetings and such, 5,000 unanticipated. So we don't really know where the solution will take us, especially in terms of finances. So we allocated a significant portion of the initial capital expenditures to unanticipated costs.
Really
in terms of the texting, sorry.
Just really quick follow-up then.
Yeah.
So this is your ask to Voluntary Airtel.
This is our ask. We are also asking for manpower to support the
and do you
program.
have any sense of how much it's going to cost us to run the text?
Yes.
Okay.
We do. This is our texting calculation. Essentially, what we did was we looked at the Voluntary Airtel website, and this is not at cost. This is an actual cost to a consumer. This is not at cost text. We calculated that there were 16 million citizens in the DRC with a 50% penetration rates times 7 texts each blast we send out, multiplied by 0.05 Congolese francs. That's the currency in the DRC, and that's how much it also costs to send a text. Divided by 928 Congolese franc per USD, we calculated that it was about $3,000 USD per blast. So considering that this is done bi-weekly, we'd expect about $6,000 per month, but this is not at cost. At cost, it would be minimal. It's 0.00000. I guess limit X approaches $0. So it's very low cost overall. the plan. In terms of the systems administration, we know that a lot of cell phone companies also send out texts already. You can see perhaps in your cell phone provider when they send out your bill is due now or something. So they already have these frameworks in place, and we plan to just extend upon those to offer something that would really fit the corporate social responsibility plan. Yeah.
Thanks.
And one just quick comment. It's, as two issues. What's the reputational risk to the company? Have you thought about that?
Right.
And the second one, a budget that has actually $5,000 of documented expenditures and $10,000 is not going to cut it. That's not how we do our budgeting.
Okay.
The contingency is usually 10% of a total project.
That's how we do it in government.
We know what we think of government performance. And usually a contingency is 10, maximum 20% of a project. It's never 50. And we don't know what the meetings are for, so that's not a credible budget, I'm afraid.
Right. All right. Well, thank you for the suggestion. We'll probably improve upon the finances later on. I think our time is over, so we have to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your